May Human Rights Commission meeting. So that we know everyone in the room, we'll start out by introducing ourselves if we can, as well as our guests that are in the audience. And we have time at the end of today's meeting for public remarks. So we can reserve any comments you may have or concerns you may have until the end. Or we'll do welcome at this time. So I'm Soji Young, I'm the chair of the commission.
Linda McKinney, vice chair.
Abdul Majid.
Kate Moore.
Mal Lazo.
Sarah Bellner.
Diallo Bennett. Kyle Bussey.
Sam Sass.
Amy Samara.
And anyone in the audience?
Mayra Rivera.
Mike Tabor, filming for Independent Media.
Brittany Shannon Roberts.
Levon Easter, Portland Commission on Disability.
So everyone should have before them the minutes from last meeting, April's meeting. So you can take a moment to look over those. Are there any amendments to the meeting minutes?
It's under committee task for updates. And the bullet number 4, where it says Community and Police Relations Committee, Abdul said there is no chair and that the person needs to define HRC roles on the committee. That's not correct. What they said is HRC needs to define the roles of members of the committee, not only HRC members. I mean, HRC members, community members, and the police, they are defining their own.
You're saying HRC needs to define the
Oh.
roles of CPSC.
Members. Because I don't know if that's there. So, that's the committee members.
So the amendment that you're proposing is the HRC needs to define roles of all CPRC members?
Thank you.
Bullet 4 of the committee and task force sessions.
Yes.
Any other proposed amendments? Is there a motion on the floor to accept the minutes as proposed, including the amendment? Is there a second? All those in favor of approving April's meeting minutes, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions?
I abstain.
That was Alan?
Mal.
Oh. The meeting minutes from April's meeting have been approved. We'll move right along to the agenda for today's meeting. Everyone could take a moment to look over that. Are there any concerns for time limits, or any additions that we need to make note of?
CPC would like to say a few words.
CDC, I apologize, I was.
I have also an update from the Oklahoma Youth Commission, but I didn't ask to put it on here. Can I put it on somewhere in announcements?
Would you like to add it to the upcoming events and emerging issues?
Well, it's not a,
Okay.
but there's about 57 policy recommendations from them that I just wanted to make sure we get out to.
Why don't we add that to the upcoming
go through each one of those briefly?
Are you gonna read all 57?
No.
Okay. I was gonna say, well, I might have an issue with timing.
Yeah, I was.
So
Okay.
it's a multiple use commission?
Right.
Okay, and I'll put that underneath the document.
Okay.
And I'd like to add that Myra is here,
Oh,
something special,
alright,
and
so,
so
yeah.
to probably
Yes, so we have time on the agenda for that as well. Thank you.
we can start officially calling the Police Accountability Committee, the Law Enforcement Review Committee. And I expect Emmanuel will come to do that.
Any additional changes to today's agenda? So to clarify, we've added Multnomah Youth Commission update to the upcoming events and emerging issues below the Godfrey Awards, and we've added time for space for Community Discovery Committee under Committee Task Force and Liaison. If there are any other additions to the agenda?
I was gonna give a brief update on the OEHR Bureau Advisory Committee, but I was just gonna do it under announcements. So we need to add it to the, under committee task force liaisons.
Sure.
Okay.
Last call for additions. Okay, so we've added the Multnomah Youth Commission to the update upcoming events and emerging issues. We've made the note that the Police Accountability Committee is recognized as law enforcement. CDC has added time, and Alan has added time to go over the bureau updates. Given those updates, is there a motion on the floor to approve the meeting agenda for today?
So moved.
Second? All those in favor of approving today's meeting agenda? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Today's meeting agenda has been approved. Okay. So we've done our welcoming and gathering. We've got time for Mr. Dante James with the OEHR update.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Good, how are you? Everyone's having a great day?
Beautiful.
Any day I need sunglasses is a good day. OEHR update. What's happening? In terms of the staff position, we did semi-final interviews and had some very, very excellent people whom we spoke with. It was a decision, quite honestly. It's amazing and wonderfully so how passionate so many people are about doing this work, which makes it harder to choose folks. It's really tough. So anyway, we are down to 2 finalists. Sanji, I, and Amalia Mahoney interviewed this semi-final group, I guess, and whittled it down to 2 people. And so tomorrow, Friday, we will, the interview will, that final interview will take place with me and Judith and Amalia. So we'll do that. They're gonna come in and spend a little bit more time and also provide some presentation on training that they have given regarding equity or human rights. So they're going to do a 10-minute presentation to us on that topic. And then we'll go from there. What else? I don't know what else. Questions while I'm thinking of anything else? I didn't draft any remarks.
So I heard that Shana and
expectation is July 1. The expectation is July 1 that the Title II and Title VI coordinator position, as well as the, I don't know what this particular title is, I think you met David, her assistant who's overseeing the transition plan, the Title II transition plan. This position was funded for one more year. And so her position and his position will come under the umbrella of OHR starting, the expected start is July 1. And so I think that's excellent consolidation of some civil rights work in the city. I've been pushing for it for about a year and a half. And had a meeting, I guess the last month and a half or so, with the city attorney and the interim CAO, Fred Miller, and all thought it was, they both thought it was what needed to happen. And so going through the process of dealing with HR and other things just to ensure all that process is not just move them over here, there's a whole kind of process that will engage to make that happen, but that will happen expected July 1. I've had broader conversations about also bringing Title I and Title VII, which is employment discrimination, over here as well. It's sort of done by HR, but actual Title VII is done by BOLI. And so HR does what's called 2.2, which is harassment issues within the city, specific racial discrimination, race, gender discrimination, et cetera. That's BOLI. So that's much a broader conversation, but it's still a conversation that the mayor is interested in having, and so is the city attorney, and even HR has said they would be willing to have that conversation. So the idea of really demonstrating the city's commitment to civil rights by not having it all over the place, so people have to go hunt and find where they're going to have to go address their issue, but trying to bring it all under one roof. That conversation is continuing. We are, a request was made to the executive committee to just get a sense of some of the budgetary items remaining, of dollars remaining in your budget. And so I've asked to reallocate a little bit of that in order to purchase equipment specific to the refugee and immigrant community, the non-English speaking community, as well as the hearing impaired community. So there will be equipment purchased, not translation, but headsets, two-way headsets, as well as equipment that allows folks to use the loop in rooms that have the hearing capability. And so that's what that funding is going to be used for. So we're going to purchase that this month and make it available throughout the city. Even the city attorney agreed that, one, it's a federal requirement to provide opportunities to be there and engage, but more and more bureaus are becoming aware of their needs to engage communities better and on a broader scale. And so it's expected that this type of equipment is going to be used and is needed much more broadly than I think 2 sets that the city has now. And so that's one set sits in, I think all the sets sit in Oni. And so we will have some as well. They won't sit here, but they'll be, we'll find a central point that it can be checked out throughout the city.
How many sets did you say you'll own at OEHR?
Two sets of headsets for translation, and then one set for the hearing impaired for the loop and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So, one, we appreciate it. I'm thinking about that, we're gonna have it with these tools. I'm surprised that we don't have a lot of the city instead. So, we will be purchased through our budget. And the OCP will use them. Why if the city supports your office by giving more money?
Yeah, I'm working. What I have suggested to the mayor and council, and the budget office, is that there needs to be, or there should be a central pot of money that bureaus can draw from in order to use interpreters or translators. Because right now, it just comes out of each individual bureau budget. Not all bureaus have budgeted for it in the future. Not all bureaus have much discretionary funding. And so, I said it's a citywide issue. There needs to be a citywide pot that comes from what's called the overhead funding model. So each bureau would essentially pay into the pot a percentage of their funding allocation, which is actually how Shoshana's position is funded, and the assistant position is funded, because each bureau pays a percentage of their funding, of their budget into that pot. So it's not an unprecedented idea.
My position is.
Oh, is it? Okay. So I'm working on it.
Thank you.
I think part of Abdul's question might have been, and Sonny, maybe this is for you to decide at this point, whether or not we're gonna talk about this later in the budget item about mechanics of how that budget piece went. So I don't know if we're gonna talk about that later, or would it be helpful to talk about it now?
We are, so at 5 o'clock, we're scheduled to talk about the expenditures. Was there anything specific that you had a question for the county
Well,
about?
to me, I think, there were a few people that were involved in how that decision was made and how that request was made. And I think it would be helpful for a group overall to know, at that highest level, how our budget works from the office through us. That sounded like it was part of your question, Abdul, or how,
I've actually, Dante is very, very smart, clever, knew what I'm doing. One is, why only Dante needs to step it up, where was it before, and why the money just went from your office? The second one is, what is the commitment of every office? I think this office should have the power and leverage to say to other offices, dictate that this is need to be done. And we're doing, some money into your office need to be given to the part for this purpose. So that's what actually Zapdo is looking for. Because this is office, we've heard Mayor and everybody a huge commitment about this office and support and has some independence. So we need to see it acting that way, not being, so that, I'm glad that.
No, I appreciate that. My office doesn't have the authority to dictate that to other bureaus, but trying to work it through the budget office and the mayor, who has the ability to say, create a overhead funding model for this, that can happen. And so that's what I'm lobbying for that. To answer your question, Alan, the genesis of my question to the executive, well, I don't even know if it was purely to the executive committee, because I know it was to you because you wrote the budget, or part of the budget, was my concern that there was such a significant amount of budget money left with a month to go to spend it, and it's not going to roll over, and so I don't want to see that disappear. So my question was more how and when and if is it going to be spent, and so the request was, that there's money that this office could use related to the work that this office, that this commission does, that I think could benefit from the use of that money. So that was where the genesis of the request.
I just want to point out too that CPRC had an event recently in the colored community where we actually, it was primarily the Hispanic community, so we needed some of those,
Yep.
so we ended up borrowing about 80 from PPS, so those really come in.
Yeah, and what I hear in Alan's question is also kind of a call to all of us as commissioners, particularly as we have new people come in. As part of our learning process is understanding how the budget is working and understanding our need to plan ahead and work perhaps with Alan and whoever's organizing the budget. So we are using those costs if we're able to. And then I think this is something that can be expected, that if we're not meeting those expectations for finances, then there's going
my concern, not my concern, my hesitation is, as in any bureau's hesitation, I don't wanna give money back. As much as I've asked the question, where is the incentive to be good stewards of money and keep it? And manage it well, which this office does. There's no incentive to do that, because if I turn back 50K, I'm gonna get 50K less next year. And so, I know last year the HRC was able to roll over the remainder, mostly because there were contracts already outstanding that would need to be paid. There was nothing in that realm that existed, and there was no real opportunity to just roll over another $30,000 without. So, that was.
And I think there is an opportunity for us to do that, just like Ian said, if we plan ahead, if we can match the needs of this commission to the resources that the office gives us, then we can be better equipped in that process. And I think that's one of the things that we probably learned this year. I think some of it, just like Kyle said, some of it was around process that we were having on this year. We had some events that slid out past the budget year. So I think we need to look at how we're planning that this year.
There's a flexibility inherent in it too, as we are volunteers and things shift in terms of our capacity.
Yeah, I think there's a real capacity issue around, because we can't, it's hard for us to spend money doing things when we can't do things, because we don't have enough people to actually do it.
Any other questions?
I just want to make a comment that over 50% of new people that came to Portland were from another country. So this translation study is very important. It was a very well discussed.
And how many actual headsets is it? It's 2 sets. What are in the,
Just 10%.
I'll say max 20. Yeah, 20. I think what they got was 80.
Yeah, so there would be 20 that we have. I think Oni has either 10 or 20. And I think one other bureau has another set. So that's what we're gonna take a look at, is trying to find out exactly who and exactly how many. And title, Shoshana is also purchasing a set before she comes over here. It was in her budget before she comes over, so I said, keep that, pay for it. And so that'll just be, so we'll have 3, it's actually 3 that are being purchased. So,
Because I think when CPRC asked Oni, they said they were broken.
I think some of them are, yeah,
There was a
so,
recent issue.
yeah, so, yeah.
I didn't do it. I'm too new for that.
So the office will have a total, and I say the office, but, because they're not gonna be housed in our office. They'll be housed somewhere they can be checked out, but we will make sure that they are overseen and kept well. So there'll be 30 actually that will have coming from us.
Any other questions before Don takes over?
I'm gonna hang around for a while.
Oh, good.
All right.
Thanks. So this time is for service recognition. I think most of you all know and have received word that Maida will be leaving us. It's very sad news, but obviously good news for her family and just the growth that's taking place within her family and her career. So I wanted to yield this time to hear from Myra. She would come up front.
Yeah.
And just kind of give us a reflection of your time, and we can thank you. We had a chance, Linda and I had a chance to go out to lunch with Maida in a more intimate setting to just thank her and get to know her on a more personal level, because I don't think we have a lot of time, and we haven't built in a lot of time in the business that we do for the Human Rights Commission to get to know each other personally. So that provided a great opportunity for us to hear more about your growing family and all of the things that are in your life. So,
You know, I just, like I said, in that email, I really feel like it's time to kind of focus and be more with my family and babies and things, and life has changed change for everything the next year, so it was really obvious that it was time to do that. So I just wanted to use the opportunity to quickly thank everybody. It really has been an awesome experience in a lot of different ways, personally, professionally. Just learning about, how the city works and being in a commission works, and it was a great learning experience, and I take a lot with me, and I just want to thank everybody. It was really good to be a part of this for 2 years, and thank you, and I know that things are going to keep moving really awesome, and there's going to be all this project, and I can't wait to hear about it and support now in any way I can. So thank you, really, truly. And I also brought a little bit of a token of appreciation. We just spent all night baking. So it's just Mexican sweet bread. So if you want to, please eat it. And just really as a way to concretely thank you. And hope that everything goes really good. It will, but
Well, we owe you tremendous thanks for, we know that this is a huge time commitment, and as someone who has a growing family and little kids, I imagine that it's even more taxing to balance all of these things. So we really appreciate the fact that you selflessly make time for human rights initiatives. Anyone else have words of thanks to share with Myra? Feel free to do so now.
I'd like to thank Myra for her clear thinking and kind of quick way of organizing things in her mind. She's just such a quick thinker, comes up with some great solutions that are simple, direct, and really sturdy. Thank you, Myra.
I really enjoyed working with you. I think we had more of an opportunity about a year ago or so when we were considering different ways to strengthen the relationship between OHR and the Human Rights Commission, and something that would be more like a formal gesture to start conversation, the MOU document. And just coming, I know it seems like a really long time ago, just coming together and researching. I did some of the initial research of what had been done internationally in similar circumstances and domestically, and you had some really good thinking about how to organize that here and commit it to paper. And then aside from that, the roundtable event, some of the very early conversations that I was part of with you, and just overall the last couple of years, because I joined the commission just before you, and your contributions were evident very quickly. So very soon after you joined the commission, you had a really great way of listening and synthesizing and then moving to action. Let's do something with this information. I always really appreciated those action-oriented comments. So thank you.
Well, we are going to be scheduling a formal get-together for the entire commission. We hope that you and Danita can join us during this meeting. We encourage you guys to get more. Thank you so much.
with that, farewell. Good luck with everything and eat the
Yeah.
bread.
I was waiting for everybody to hear.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you. I really appreciate the work you do, and I really appreciate your humility and approaching me to learn about me and new occasions and learn about each member here and to learn about the history. And you're an action person, which I love. But one thing I think I need to suggest, since we're talking and we're talking about the budget, is always I see commissions is living with nothing. So how can we have a plaque or something that's signed by the commissioner, which is the mayor or whoever in charge of liaison, and also maybe Dante, or as a recognition of the work that this person or these people did. And they will go as far as any commission that we know of lately, last couple of years, we will let the commission or start with mayor as first. So I would suggest doing something like that.
Thank you.
I also had something too. I was actually waiting for Abdul to go.
Sit down, Myra.
As far as I said in my email to you, I'm sad to see you go because we were getting ready to work on some pieces moving forward, and that's actually what I wanted to talk a little bit about. Can you talk a little bit about where we were heading with some of those pieces, and suggestions that you might have for us moving forward? You're going to be gone now. What kinds of things do you think we should be doing coming up and heading into the future from where you are now that you're free to speak without?
Well, actually, No, I think the one thing that I was really interested in, working with you was the Facing Race report from Western State Center. And there's, I think they're still pretty open. It's basically, it's a matter of contacting them saying, hey, you want to come and present. And I think it's a really good way of learning about what they're doing and also ways that report can be utilized and kind of help with the outreach and kind of be the funnel in a way, the megaphone, to say this is what's happening and then reach out and help with that kind of identification of what's already going on. I think that's really good. I also think that the Oregon Commission for Women, they're working on releasing a women's report that focuses on equality, and they are looking. They have the Friends of the Oregon Commission of Women right now. They're looking for sponsorships, and I know they would love to have somebody approach them. I would love to put them in touch. I just talked to them this week. I'm sure it's really exciting, and that's another way that the commission can engage in supporting. You're working on the release of this information. Let's support you and financially, if possible, if not just with outreach, but help connect with women and other people that are working on this. I think that would be another really good cause to focus on and be involved with. Just to I think things like that. I think it's good to kind of just identify what's going on and just primarily help support and enhance. Over from that perspective.
Ira, before you go, I just wanted to say how much I enjoyed working with you, and whenever you came to a meeting, especially outside our big meetings, I was always really happy that you were there because I felt like you had this great ability to get to the point very quickly and to be practical in your thinking and very, at the same time, very thoughtful. But I felt like you were really somebody who was able to get things done. And as chair, that was something that I really appreciated, as having a lot of people who were able to take the initiative and really get moving on things and being able to count on results from you. And that was just really, really nice. And being able to see you develop into that was great because I was in Ashley's class, or I am in Ashley's class, I guess, and so we saw you come on, and so I had the benefit of seeing your entire tenure on the commission. It was especially helpful to me as chair to have you around, so thank you very much for all your work on that. It was just really great to have you, and I'll miss you.
I don't miss you guys. I was like, oh, that's the last time I'm working with you.
I also want to say something, Myra, because we joined at the same time, and I want to say that it was an honor to join with you and Amy because you guys are both powerhouses, and it's awesome. I've gotten to know you pretty well, and we even had a couple of conflicts that I think are growing moments for me. And so, and I think I'm gaining a friend out of it. And I think it's sad that we're losing somebody like you, a strong and intelligent, powerful Latino woman, and I wish you good fortune. Thank you.
No, I agree. I mean, I hope that this is not the end. I mean, it's just kind of the beginning of a new phase. And like I said, it's like a turning point. I would love to get together or support in whatever way. Or you have my contact information, and hopefully this won't be the last time we see each other.
Well, one more round of applause.
And
The breath.
thank you for making that recommendation. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
So, immediate business. Tonight, Malloy could not join us. We had hoped that they would be bringing, the nominating committee would be bringing two new nominees to replace Donita and Mayana. Is there anyone from the nominating committee that has an update from Malloy? I think he had communicated something.
Yeah, so he sent me an email today, so I think I'm gonna take over as chair, because he's pretty busy. So I offered to take over as chair. But, and,
Thank you.
yes, and so, there's been some miscommunication, I think, because, Rolly's been really busy. So hopefully I'm gonna take over as chair, and I wanna try to schedule interviews in the next week or so, so that we can have those nominations as soon as possible. So that's the only update I have right now.
Thank you for assuming that role.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm wondering if we actually need to make a motion that you appoint Sam the chair?
So that's what happens with every committee?
I don't know.
No.
Well, I think we should.
The
know, I
nominations committee, there was a conversation and there was a motion.
Nominating is an ad hoc.
Nominating is an ad hoc committee. And my understanding is that ad hoc, that committee has always appointed its own chair. But
That's what
I just know it's changed a few
CPRC.
times.
CPRC is not. So that's one.
So
we
Sherry,
use.
you have a different understanding?
You know, it's not my understanding that we would not vote on a chair, but if the historian's perspective is that we have not, I'm looking at Alan, could you raise them?
I raised this question, actually, no, I'd have to look at the, I
Okay.
don't know if we have.
It's not in the bylaws.
There's nothing in the
And
bylaws
Not
about
on the
ad hoc.
nominating committee.
We're also in the midst of this, new process design, and we did talk about endorsing committee chairs, right, in that context? But we didn't get far enough to say whether or not that's something we wanted to require for that piece.
Well, given the nature of, I guess, the urgent nature that we require nominations and we need a chair, I think it's safe to say that if he accepts the role as chair, then that's what it shall be, unless there are any other concerns about that process.
And we've got a quorum here too, so we can vote on it right now if you wanted to.
Let's do it.
So,
So,
I move that Sam become chair of the nominating committee.
second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Congratulations, you're the chair.
Efficient
Thank
work,
you.
Sunji.
Thank you.
Nice work.
Okay. Bylaw review and proposals. So I believe this was brought up by Alan regarding CPRC, and just wanted to get a little bit more history from Alan and Abdul, since Abdul, we have him present, regarding CPRC and Damon as well, as far as the structure of CPRC and the need for requests to appoint the vice chair as well. So whomever would like to start the conversation.
So I actually brought copies of, and we actually as a group didn't get to talk about this prior to this, but we've been talking about it at the CPRC level. So I have copies of the protocols with the edits that we can make for vice chair. And I'm gonna pass that down to Abdul, since he's the new chair of CPRC. But I think we ought to use this opportunity to have a conversation about the verbiage that's in here. So remember that CPRC is not, these aren't actual bylaws. There are no bylaws in, there's nothing in our HRC bylaws that govern CPRC. So that's why there's a set of protocols that we use to follow. And so the ask is to add in this vice chair position. And so we did talk about it in CPRC recently, I guess in the last meeting. And so I knew we were gonna talk about this tonight, so I wanted to get some draft verbiage around this. And I think that, especially for the CPRC folks that are here tonight, I think we wanna talk about whether or not the verbiage that's in here is correct. Did you get what's in?
Yes.
Okay. So the two additions would be, the two places that the chair is mentioned is in section 3, under the bullet there that describes the committee composition. It just says there, the chair of the CPRC is an active member of the Human Rights Commission. So the chair of CPRC has to be an HRC member. And the chair of CPRC is appointed by the chair of the HRC. So the one possible addition would be just to say simply that the vice chair of CPRC is appointed in a similar way by the chair of the HRC. We also did not, because we have not decided at the CPRC level whether or not there's going to be a restriction on who can serve as the vice chair. There's thinking that it should be an HRC person, because the other change is, if you look on the second page under section 4, letter D, the vice chair really is the person that, similar to here, the vice chair of CPRC essentially becomes the chair, when the chair is unable to fulfill his or her duties, so they step into that role. So it's not as if there are co-chairs, you know, remember that CPRC is that sort of three-legged stool of the police, the community, and the HRC. So rather than having it as kind of co-chairs, really it is a vice chair position that becomes the chair when the chair is unable to fulfill their duties, if they're unable to attend meetings or away. So the thinking, so one of the thinking thoughts that, you know, right now, I think we're thinking about it as vice chair that's an HRC person, but we're not writing that into the proposal, the proposed change to the protocols at this point. And then Damon, I didn't get to hear exactly what you said because Sonja was also talking. But this verbiage, you would prefer that the CPRC appoint the vice chair? Is that what you're saying?
I would, yes, but I'm looking at the language in section 3. And like Alan was saying, there's not agreement yet on, there's differing opinions in the room. Some people in the room feel like vice chair should be a member of the HRC. There's other people that feel like that the vice chair should be open to the community members on the HRC. So that isn't quite settled, but in relation to this particular point, vice, I mean, I'm open to that. I was just reading it now for the first time, so it just kind of struck me, that's all.
So I want to be helpful here, and I think what would help me to be helpful is if we could have some background as to what brought you guys to this decision, one, and then maybe a little more about reasonings behind the two decision, yes, HRC or exclusively, or opening that up. Just kind of bring us into the.
I think it's a natural evolution, you know. The CPRC, I think, is one of the only sort of major committees, subcommittees, that doesn't operate with a vice chair. So we really thought it was unusual that a committee of that stature didn't have a vice chair. And there were times when, you know, in any times whether it was Hector or Anita, that we needed somebody to step in. And it wasn't actually clear who that would, it wasn't clear by the way we operate who that should be by protocol. You know, we've had some assistance from Maria Lisa, who's been helping to move that committee along. She's been one of the people that they've gone to, or Anita has called on another HRC member to say, can you know, start the meeting without me, I'm behind or something. So this is, the idea is to make that clear. And like I said, that the conversation around who that person should be actually is one that is continuing. And it is defined a little bit by how the role is defined. I mean, you know, one of the arguments for having it be an HRC person is this is a vice chair becomes the chair when the chair is gone. And so you know, there's a certain level of accountability when you have one of these 5 HRC members as that chair. That there's less accountability when you have somebody else. Most likely the community. The police occupy a different role in that committee, so it wouldn't be a police officer. So the only other choice are community folks. As far as Damon, when you're talking about, you know, the CPRC would do the same as they do with the chair. They would recommend somebody to be appointed. So I think that's the process, and I think we have a recommendation. So I don't know that we're looking to settle the community or HRC person tonight, to just at least create a position. And I think CPRC is also going to come back at another point and make a recommendation about that. The thought and hope is that it wouldn't create a problem before we can make that decision. Anyway, that's the history behind vice chair.
I think, this committee is a very crucial committee. And the mayor, previous mayor, and other really wants Human Rights Commission to oversee that committee. So it's not, there is no politics, there is no influences, and the biggest part is still, remember Tom Patrick, that is accountability of the people who are in that committee, and guess who? Not the police, but the community, HRC. So, to have that responsibility, for me, I think, either tonight, or if it's not tonight, is to not have CPRC deciding what should be done I think we need to decide who should be the vice chair and the roles. Again, I'm going to bring it up, and then doing last time my job mentioned that every member of CPRC, it needs to come from here. What's their role and expectations when they are there, and what's their level of power in that. For me, I take it seriously when I'm in that committee, that if I acted in certain ways, or I did in certain ways, I am responsible to this commission and responsible to the city officials who put me in this position or put expectation on us. Otherwise, I will sign if at one point I will not fulfill those, and I should recommend everybody should. So if you have in a chair, when we was talking about the chair, historically I'm taking here, it was only Human Rights Commission for that reason. And if we're going to create a vice chair, automatically, and maybe the lawyers here know that, it will pass to vice chair. And to hold a vice chair who is not a Human Rights Commission, responsible for behaviors and things like that, commitment, I will tell you good luck. Because they are not as for us. And for us as Human Rights Commissions, we have the expertise, the passion, and the community passion as well, to know what are the parameters and how we should operate and keep that honesty and integrity going. So those what I will recommend is any decision goes from here, and also the roles as well as if we need a vice chair or not. Thank you.
I thought I saw your hand up and I saw Linda's.
Either way.
Go ahead, Colin.
So I can understand the desire to include a non-HRC member as vice chair. I think it would make things easier for the CPRC on the surface, because you're more likely to have 5 more candidates who are going to be available and who are going to be passionate about the work, and people who are in the community who are coming to those meetings are going to be very passionate about that work. But as chair of CPRC, you're making decisions and you're spending money. You are responsible for more than just planning things and running meetings. You've got your hands on our city's dollars and resources, and I think that it would be potentially problematic if somebody in the community were to question a decision or an expenditure or a program of the CPRC, and the city was not able to say, well, that's our, the city was not able to be held responsible for those decisions because it was a community member, and as chair, you get to make those decisions, and you can say, we're spending money there, we're doing this. And I think that even from a legal standpoint, you may run into issues allowing people who are not appointed by our city council to be a member of the HRC, and then you're CPRC member by virtue of that HRC membership. You could run into problems if that person who was making those decisions was not appointed by the city. So I think that is although I understand the desire to have the vice chair be somebody who is not as an HRC member, I really think that, I think we can't allow that to happen. Because I think that there needs to be accountability up the chain, and the buck has to be able to stop at the city of Portland. And if you've got somebody making decisions who has absolutely no accountability to the city of Portland, I think we may run into problems there. So that would be my caution. That's my lawyer speak for the night.
Linda, and then Sam.
I did hear talk that you might delay this decision to another meeting far in the future, and I'm hoping that we can make a reasoned decision tonight that we would be all comfortable with, because I feel that this has been kind of in limbo for a while, and in my opinion, it should be tightened up so that we have our ducks in a row at CPRC and everyone knows what the ducks are.
My issue is, it's CPRC, but it's not the vice chair. So I raised this question before when we appointed a new police officer. So the process for the appointment of the Human Rights Commissioner to the CPRC there's 5 of us, there's 5 police, and there's 5 community members. Do the community members go through an interview process? So, and I went through an interview process.
Community members go through an application process, right?
So, and then you know where I'm going. I don't feel comfortable, how do I say this? I think that the process needs to be fair and equitable, you know, this for everyone that's a member of the CPRC, including the police. So just having someone appointed without going through an interview process or an application process doesn't sit well with me. So, and I'm not saying we need to decide that tonight, but we recently had, and I don't have any problem with any of the members on the CPRC, but I would feel more comfortable if we have another opening for a police officer or a community member, that they go through the process that everybody else has to go through. So that's my issue. And I'm open to the vice chair. I think I agree with what Kyle's saying as far as the vice chair goes. So.
Points of clarification.
Go ahead.
So you're talking interview application for not HRC, but it's you're talking about police and community.
Well, for the CPRC, for every member, new member to the CPRC, there'd be an interview process.
Not including an interview with HRC members.
Well, I was interviewed
As an HRC member?
to sit on the CPRC, yes. I went, so after I was,
You've just been on the CPRC for so long.
yeah. So before I was, appointed to the CPRC, I went through an interview process with human rights members and a police officer.
And a community.
And a community member.
And you're saying that that does not seem to be the case?
Well, the most recent appointment of the police officer was just appointed, and I brought it up in CPRC that I think, you know, I asked the question, would you be open to having an interview process, and I think that when I brought that up, we need to have more discussion. So the short of it is, I think that needs to happen for everybody. If that's a standard that we have, it should be for everybody, including the police.
So I have a small question then on what you're saying. Are you basically saying that everybody who's on CPRC should be able to go through the same kind of process to be qualified to be a chair if possible, so that everybody is
A member.
a member? Yeah.
It's just talking about for membership.
Oh, just for membership?
No, just for membership to the CPRC. So, yeah,
Because I'm thinking, like, this conversation is about who can be a chair,
Vice chair.
or vice chair. But I'm gonna yield just for the sake of time, because it's almost.
So it sounds like Alan, and if I'm not mistaken, so there's some language that we need to be able to approve, but the CPRC is getting back together to have another conversation?
Well, I think what the point that Bill made was that potentially the language should originate here and get pushed back down to CPRC if this body has an opinion as to, I mean, it's gonna have to come back to here to be approved. It's not CPRC's decision about that. They certainly, would like to have a conversation about it, but ultimately it's not their decision.
Is Tommy still interested in getting?
Do you have a comment on that?
If am I ex officio member or not? I don't know. I would, Kyle answered my question about whether CPRC had its own budget that it could expend without your approval. And the answer to that seems to be yes. So if that is in fact the case, I would have a problem with a community member who was not approved by city council being in a position to expend city funds. I don't know how the voting process could work, et cetera, but that would be my comment / concern that I think would need to be answered before there is a possibility that a community member could be a chair of a subcommittee that is then expending city funds.
So the language we have here tonight that you've highlighted, Alan,
Uh-huh.
are those the proposed changes that you would like us to make, or are there?
I think I was chairing the last, because we, and also the chair was chairing last meeting. And one of the things that started going is selecting a vice chair, and they said, no, we need to put brakes. The discussion is, should we have a vice chair or not? And they want that to come to HRC, in my opinion, to decide again, first, should we have a vice chair or not? Decision. Then, if yes, then we'll move forward to this comment. And we really like in this comment, thank you for writing them, that this adjusting bylaws, or modifying bylaws, or not. And as Linda mentioned, I really would love it all to be decided today. Those are the two big decisions.
So the vice chair position, whether or not.
To
we-
approve it,
To approve.
to have it or not.
And whether or not that person needs to be an HRC commissioner or
Yes.
community.
Yes. Then we'll come to modification of the bylaws if we decided to have a vice chair, what should be the language.
Yeah, I
So
think
that's
there would
what-
just be a language piece, yeah.
So would you move to make the proposal or amend, to propose that there be a vice chair position and that person be an HRC commissioner?
I propose that it's legitimate to have a vice chair position, and that vice chair, it should be a human rights commissioner, and appointed by the Human Rights Commission to be the vice chair of CPRC committee.
Clarification, appointed by the Human Rights Commission chair, as it reads here.
Yeah.
I so move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those, make sure, hands high, I
Aye.
can see you. Okay. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Proposal's been approved.
So it sounds like your motion, Abdul, or Kate, was that, so what I would change, what I propose to the language in this, those protocols, is essentially the sentence that is underlined would not become exactly the same as the sentence above it. So the chair of the Community and Police Relations Committee is an active member of the Human Rights Commission and is appointed to serve in this capacity by the chair of the Human Rights Commission. So then the second sentence would read the exact same thing. It just says the vice chair of the Community and Police Relations Committee is an active member of the Human Rights Commission and is appointed to serve in this capacity by the chair of the Human Rights Commission. Does that reflect what that motion was?
Yes.
Yes.
So that's the,
So it should read, the chair of the Community and Police Relations Committee is an active member of the Human Rights Commission and is appointed to serve in this capacity by the chair of the Human Rights Commission. The chair, vice chair of the Community and Police Relations Committee is an active member of the Human Rights Commission and is appointed to serve in this capacity by the chair of the Human Rights Commission.
yes.
Okay.
Can you-
Yes, go ahead.
And this is dangerous because I'm a non-native English speaker. Why did we don't say the chair and vice chair of the Community and Police Relations and go down?
Hey,
Good.
I'm gonna simplify it. I read it like it was written here.
You're a better English speaker.
You're very, you're ahead of the game, Abdul. Okay, so we're at 5 o'clock. Any, Kyle, you sound like you have a,
Well, I think that you might, because you're announcing that there is a chair and a vice chair, if you start off with just saying the chair and the vice chair are what they are, then you haven't actually announced that there is a chair and a vice chair. So I think that what you should say is, there will be a chair and a vice chair of the Community and Police Relations Committee. The chair and the vice chair of the Community and Police Relations Committee are, or shall be, active members of the Human Rights Commission. See what I'm saying? You want to make an announcement first and then go into the description of how they become that. That's just, that's how you would want to do
Can
it.
we act like in quotes? And,
No.
with about a minute,
No.
with about a minute,
I'm
yes.
kidding.
Okay, so as it stands currently,
Did you get it?
okay. Do you need us to repeat it at all, Alan?
No, I can repeat it back right now if you want.
Yes, go ahead.
So section.
So you want to do it in the form of a motion?
So I move that we revise the CPRC protocols in section 3 to read, there shall be a chair and vice chair of the Community and Police Relations Committee. The chair and vice chair shall be active members of the Human Rights Commission and shall be appointed to serve in this capacity by the chair of the Human Rights Commission.
Is there a second?
And then do you want to propose
Is there
the,
another?
Oh, yes, and then the other change will be as shown in the handout that you have in section 4 sub D. We would add the sentence that says, the vice chair is responsible for fulfilling the duties of the chair in his or her absence.
second?
All those in favor of the proposed amendments?
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. The proposed language has been approved.
Good job.
Okay. So we actually should be moving on to budget expenditures. The two items in the immediate business that we had not covered were the program coordinator position and the council liaison program. I think we do need to cover that information, so.
I'll do my best to be very quick. Program coordinator transition plan, and we'll lean on you for help with this. So back at the retreat, the question came up as to whether or not we wanted to work on HRC, getting all on the same page about our requests, hopes, dreams, expectations about staffing. And since then, as you all know, we're moving within a transition with Jeff, and we're still going to receive support from Jeff. And we have a new person coming in to do program coordinator role. And so what I did over the past couple of weeks is send an email out to folks asking for their input on how would you want to see that role interact with us in terms of tasks and leadership. And 3 or 4 of you responded. I had individual conversations with the 2 of you, 3 of you. And so this is just a quick summary of what I heard. And I think this is just a starting place. And if there's anything that you see reflected that's from you that I didn't get right, we of course can edit that. And then what Sonja and I thought to do from this is to figure out a plan to help support this new person coming in and we also talked about communicating with Jeff. I want to communicate with Jeff certainly to get his insights on this, because a lot of what I think people were able to add to this were in observing the great work that he's done, and also the way that we were interacting with him, our capacities in that, and all of that. So I'll just leave it at that, and just maybe folks want to comment or discuss how we might move forward for that.
Yes. So I want to thank Amy for taking the lead in keeping us on point regarding the conversation that we had at the retreat, specifically around this position. I think one of the challenges that we've had with how we work together in supporting Jeff is making sure that we don't minimalize his capacity and what he's capable of doing. And I think whomever will be entering into this role is certainly someone who has either equal or I would say equal capacity to lend a great set of skills to the Human Rights Commission. And working with Dante specifically, I think we've talked to Dante and making sure that we are more supportive of how we help that person to transition into this work. But Dante has been very clear with us in making sure that we have the autonomy to also utilize our voices. So I don't want us to become too muddled in how we see a transition working, but I think these recommendations are definitely starting points for how we create a transition plan for this person working with us. So if there are any additional comments that Amy has not captured, and you didn't have a chance to really review the job description, please share that information with Amy so that we can get a greater sense of any outlying concerns. And then Amy, myself, Dante, and Linda will be working together to create a proposed transition plan. So, and I should say, myself, Dante, Jeff, Amy, and Linda will be working together, because Jeff obviously is going to be the person leading that conversation, Jeff and Dante, so. Are there any concerns about the idea of having a transition plan?
It's not a concern at all, and I did visit with Amy about some of this, and I really appreciated the opportunity to weigh in. Will this take shape or sort of end up being more of a transition and sort of scope of work or coverage plans? It's not just about the transitory period, but subsequent, out of staff or to this body.
Yeah, I imagine that, it's the beginning of conversations. I don't think it's fair for us to expect to have one conversation and then for it to be said and done. And I think the topic of how's it going, is HRC getting what they need, is this person getting what they need, is OEHR getting what they need? There's a lot of moving parts with this role, as we all know. So, like I said, I think it's a starting point, and we wanted to begin at this transition and support the transition, but also be ongoing. Like we wanted the MOU to be, right? So it's something we started with, but it's we just realized, oh, this is an open document, a love document.
Any other questions, comments?
I was out of the room when this document was passed out. Or did I have it?
It's in
Which,
It's in your
yeah, it's in your packet. It should be in your packet.
Have you already talked with Dante about this process? I guess since you're here, is this acceptable for how you want to proceed, Dante, with the new staff person and things?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Okay,
Sun-
great.
Sanjay and I and Linda met, and we had some brief conversation about this process as well. So.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else, Amy?
Not about that.
Okay.
There was one piece I didn't see, and I'm remembering now, as a follow-up from last month, and that's regarding the roundtable recommendations. We were gonna get feedback from committee leads about what roundtable recommendations they were gonna assume within their committee.
So I spit that out down
Oh,
at the
you
committee
did.
task force liaison, and specifically highlighting roundtable. So you see
Okay.
that from 5:40 to 6:10.
Okay.
Is that okay?
That's great, thank you.
All right, council liaison program, I think this will be pretty quick. So the council liaison, as I understand it, was a role intended to work alongside all of our councilmen and women, or councilmen, specifically helping to create a bridge of understanding around what we're hearing in the community, at the HRC level, and creating some collaboration, is what I understand. We have not gotten as far as we would have liked with the liaison program, and the question now is, do we want to continue at the proposed format where we were assigning, or folks were able to volunteer to whom or which council person they wanted to support, or if that role will be just assigned to one person. So I think this precedes my time on the commission. I think I probably came in right as you all were having conversations. I remember right before I was appointed that this was one of the topics that you all were discussing. So I don't want to spend a lot of time, but I do want to kind of resurrect the conversation around how is that going, what's not working, and if it's not working, get an understanding of how we can get it. I hope I didn't press the back button, Kyle.
No, well, the liaison program started last year, and we had 2 of our 4 liaisons either left the commission or got a job with a city councilor. And so we ended up, and then actually ended up kind of not having capacity to do it because you moved to Salem, like your job moved to Salem. And so I think what happened was that when the liaison idea came about, it was when I became chair, my goal was to try to build those bridges. So I started meeting with all of the commissioners and their staff right away. That was like one of the first things that I did. And I told them what I'd like to do is continue these relationships through a liaison program. And they all said, great, let's do that. And so then we had, so Ashley volunteered, and Amy volunteered, and John Versu and I kind of divvied up the different offices. And it was challenging in a lot of different ways, one of which was the scope of that responsibility and what the bylaws of those communications would be. Sort of almost the unwritten rules of those communications, you know. And I think personally that it is important to continue those relationships. When we gave our report to council, at least two commissioners specifically mentioned how they were impressed with our efforts to reach out to them and schedule regular appointments with them. So I would suggest that we should continue it. It just needs to be worked on a little bit. And we need to include the commissioners and their staff in creating those relationships and creating that model. Because we're not going to be able to tell them how they should feel and what they should feel comfortable with. We need to work with them to do that. And my suggestion would be to work on this a little bit offline. If people are interested in participating in that effort, I'd be happy to be sort of like the hub. And if you want to talk to me about it, I think it's a really important program that it yields some meaningful results just in the relationship arena over the last year. So I think we should continue doing it, and I think it should be more than one person because it's just too much work. There is a lot to do, and but I do continue to believe that Amy's suggestion at the very outset of it was the best one, which was that we should be assigning people who are interested in the issues that they're assigned commissioner as, or in Ashley's case, from a policy perspective, Ashley was assigned to Martha Pellegrino's office of government relations, and so that I thought was a really nice fit. So, but I also think that the chair being under the umbrella of the mayor's office should be the contact with the mayor. So if anybody does,
Yeah, I think I would be encouraged if everyone leaned on you to come together and talk about how to formalize it. And specifically around the communications piece. I think that's my greatest area of concern, is how we are communicating with our council men and women, and what information do we need to be sharing with them in the best utilization of their time.
well, and making them feel comfortable that they
Right.
can tell us and be candid with us, and knowing that, you know, that can be a candid conversation.
Right.
And I think that's really important, and so we need to be careful about that. It's a sensitive topic, so.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that are shared in those meetings that you don't necessarily want aired,
Right.
so.
I just want to quickly say, I totally agree with Kyle, and I think when we look back at our mandate, our original and current mandate about what we do, and that's giving consult to city council for a human rights lens, and we're only as strong to do that as our relationships are strong. So, I'd like to see this very, very top priority, and I'm happy to help any way that I can.
So if anybody who hasn't participated is interested, please talk to me after the meeting today. And maybe we can organize a meeting, if we'll arrange it so that hopefully
Yes.
Sonia will be there and Amy can participate, and that would be great.
Thank you. All right, so we're gonna try to catch up with time here. Budget expenditures update. So as Dante mentioned, our budget was sitting right at $24,000, and we only have a month left in the fiscal year. So we need to do some catching up, and if necessary, some reappropriations of those dollars so that they can be best used for what are the most urgent needs within OEHR as well as the HRC. So I have received feedback from Kyle and Alan regarding how they plan to spend, their committees plan to spend their budget for the rest of the year. I'm waiting any additional feedback from other committees that have budget needs and any other proposed expenditures that you all would like to discuss now. I would open that up now for anyone who wants to specifically talk about expenditures that they either have not spent or dollars that they have not spent within their budget. And if you do not plan on spending those dollars and have not submitted a proposal on how you plan on spending those, then giving us the okay to reappropriate those back to the general budget for OEHR. Because I think there are some pressing needs of OEHR that we don't want to hold up either. Go ahead, David.
So when you say Kyle and Alan, so you're saying HTTF and CPRC, you've heard from in terms
Well,
of.
I've, just in general from Alan around the budget, but I've heard from Kyle specifically
Right, HTTF.
about HTTP.
So you need to hear from all the rest of the committee.
Every committee.
Okay.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do, and I sent out an email specifically raising the point that we were gonna have this discussion tonight. What I have allotted is until May 9th, so Friday, to let me know specifically how you want to utilize your funds, if you still have pending expenditures. If you don't, May 9th is the date that you can also notify me and let me know that you have no intentions to spend these dollars for this fiscal year. And that way we can figure out as a commission, what are the most pressing needs. If there are committees that are completely out of money, and have some pressing needs, that you can offer a substantial proposal around, then as a commission, we would be willing to see those proposals. But we need to make those decisions within the next week. I mean, the month is almost, we're into the mid of the month next week. So. Any questions, concerns? Yes.
I'll just say, if a decision does have to be made about reallocating money, one thing that the Human Trafficking Task Force is involved in right now is really trying to get the word out about the programs that we're starting to put on a quarterly basis, and just about trying to raise awareness and educate about trafficking. And one of the ways that we're trying to do that is through written educational materials like flyers, pamphlets, and also some public service announcements. So we would like to get going on a public service announcement campaign if we can, and that does cost money. And so if there is an opportunity to increase the budget for this fiscal year for the HTTF, we would certainly be appreciative of that. And so if there is money out there, that's something that we would ask for. And I've already submitted I would try to be pretty modest about our additional request, but I could be very immodest about it as well. So the more there is, the better job we'll be able to do. It's really just about disseminating information into the public, and the more we have to do that, the better.
So just to be clear for committee leads, this is about making proposals for expenses that are to be paid for by mid-June?
Probably May, end of May.
By end of May. So these are quick turnaround purchases.
So even if those expenses are, like Dante had said earlier, they're going to be spent, they're like some type of agreement, because the CDC can't hold the event or housing event until June or maybe July. So, but we do have like kind of budget for that.
So if you have a budget in place for the event, and you have agreements that are pending, so you need to take care of those invoices, then the budget you've allotted for this fiscal year can be spent on those items this fiscal year. What Dante is referring to is that those dollars can't be rolled over as they were last year, where I think there were concessions made because there were pending contracts. Was that what you said?
Yes.
Okay.
Pending contracts.
So there were pending contracts, outline contracts, so.
But if CDC has budgeted for, let's say $5,000 for a single event, and that cannot possibly get paid, then that money should go back into the general fund, because there's no reason to earmark it unless you know you're gonna spend it before June 30th. So
Things you
it's
know
not gonna happen
are
like,
coming.
by the end of this month, and definitely let some of you know, because that money can be used elsewhere. And of course, we're not talking about the $10,000 that's going to back into the OEHR budget.
That was my clarification, Sonia, for two things you said. So you said $24,000. So is that the number that is remaining in the HRC budget after the $10,000?
So after the $10,000, we have right at $14,000 remaining.
And does that number include other things you've already heard? So for instance, we've talked about bus tours, and then also there is money that was to go from CPRC to pay for the training. So you're not accounting for those?
I'm not accounting for those things. It's just a solid 14,000, and then
So you'll do
based on what you all submit to me, then we're going to make the necessary adjustments.
Okay. And then, so in the May 9th, was that in your original email?
Yeah. Any other questions about the budget? Okay. Awesome. Okay, upcoming events and emerging issues. The HDF outreach event, did you want to?
Well, that's a
It's a past event.
That's a past event, but it had emerged on April 27th. It was great. We had about 25 volunteers there. There were a lot more actual volunteers than trafficking survivors, but we were able to identify, I believe it was 4 new trafficking survivors who are going to get immigration assistance, either through a T visa or a U visa, which is just fantastic. It was a high percentage of people who actually came in who were qualified for the assistance that we were intending to provide them. We had it out in Sophie Island. The thinking was that it was going to be a good opportunity for immigrant workers who were working on the island, and we didn't get the turnout that we thought we would. It was a really kind of weird weather day. Got the location was a little bit confusing, and I know that at least one of our volunteers had a hard time finding it. So I didn't want to put
I'll never forget now.
but it was really a fantastic event. I mean, part of in addition, obviously, to the wonderful news that we're going to help for trafficking survivors, we're building a network of immigration lawyers who are volunteering, paralegals who are volunteering. There was actually a guy who came and played music at the event, which was found very strange at first. That we were going to provide entertainment at this thing, but
Was it soothing?
It was very soothing. Well, it was, and the thing is, it's a very difficult topic, and people are telling stories that they've never told anybody. It's really heart-wrenching, and for both the attorneys and the victims and victims' families who were there. And it was actually, I've heard from a number of lawyers who said this was really nice, actually, to have this in the background. For one thing, because it provided a little bit of drowning out noise when people were telling these really horrific stories. But we provided childcare, provided food. Thank you, Linda, for going and getting coloring books and things for the kids, which we provided. Jeff was tremendously helpful as usual. So it was just a great event. And so our next event is going to be on August. It's going to be in mid-August. I think it's a little bit fluid, but for now it's tentatively scheduled for August 17th, a Sunday. We're not sure yet, but we think it's going to be south of town just a little bit. The Portland trafficking problem is not limited to the city limits always, and so we're helping Portland victims sometimes by getting out a little bit beyond city limits, and I'm perfectly comfortable with that. But that one is going to be, I think, better attended because we're going to be focusing on some churches, specifically a little bit south of town. So that should be really, really great. So we're really looking forward to that. We've got a lot of people who are on board with this program right now, and so it's a really exciting project.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're trying to come up with a name that works for it. We were on KBOO the week before the event, promoting it.
You did a great job. I listened to both of you.
Oh, thank you.
Good job.
And we're, I kept saying things like the free legal services, and you don't want to limit it simply to immigrant victims only, because there are trafficking victims who are not immigrants that could potentially come for assistance, and that would be really great. But you also don't want somebody coming in and saying, "I just got my bike stolen." Do I get free legal advice? So we're trying to come up with a name that will be a little bit better communication tool. So if anybody thinks of it, please feel free to email me. But we're working on it. We'll get it out there.
Thank you. So the June and July commission trainings, I think we spoke about this before my injury, is utilizing some time to provide training to our Human Rights Commission. And some of the topics, I think you all have received the survey that I sent out. I think we've received about seven responses, so still waiting on some folks to respond. But in looking at the survey as a gauge for what types of offerings we could supply in a training, I've noticed a trend right now has been government, more information about the government, and how city government works. And perhaps I would leave it open for you all to make recommendations. Would it be the recommendation of you all to have someone from within one of the government bureaus to come and speak to us about how equity and inclusion is working within their department, or how they function? What are some of the areas of interest, I should say? If it's not government, then are there any other areas of interest? We talked about communications. Jeff will not be available for June, but he will let me know if he's available for July communications training. We talked about orientation, which is something that I think we have to formalize as a commission and what that looks like. So the June meeting is open for recommendations on what type of training you all want to see.
I want to make sure that we're, as well, I think you captured a lot of them, but Ashley's kind of holding on to the rest of that, what we framed at the retreat. Are there any others that were on that original list?
Thank you for your message. I just wanted to get
Oh,
back
that's
to you,
okay.
Cindy. So we have been corresponding, Jeff, about that, because I mentioned the last monthly Human Rights Commission meeting that there was to be a discussion at the executive committee about when this would be held. So yes, in my communication, I included the other things, the wrap up of the retreat, that you and I would co-handle. At least that's what I have in my notes. And there was mention of professional development, which you're talking about, that training, that was a shared request, or it came up again and again. I can't off the top of my head remember what, there was one other, I thought there were 3 things that I sent via email that were just captured in the notes.
There was the piece, I think, of core, getting information from committees about their core work. And we were gonna weave in the roundtable assumptions for that. I know we're gonna start getting to that today. That's all I remember.
And then I guess the last piece was already said, the communications training was requested also.
So are you asking for suggestions of trainings?
Sure, yes.
For me, is I can go and figure out bills of the city. And there are many free classes that talks about civil, and you can attend them. What is really crucial, and I still see it happening, is 2 areas that really, really crucial, even in institutions of education institutions still struggling with. Those 2 trainings are white privilege and intercultural communications. If we're going to spend our money, we have to spend on somewhere we have a weakness that none of us can provide it, and nobody will do it for free, and it is crucial. For me, it's those 2 topics that are important to me.
So you're saying that for the Human Rights Commission to be trained on?
Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry.
First, I think you may not have me on your list, so I want to make sure that you get my email address.
Which list? I've been including you.
Yeah, I'm not. So
Okay.
I just
I
want
wonder
to
if
check
it's
on that.
bouncing back, maybe I missed those.
Yeah,
Okay. Thank you.
And secondly, I just want to, let you know that I have some experience in teaching about
I'd like to possibly see, let's talk about recidivism and just the mass incarceration of just our young individuals and the transitional services that they receive, or that they should receive post incarceration. Whether that's a skill set or just some educational curriculums and classes. That's just something I've been passionate about for a while, and every day it seems like somebody else is going to jail, somebody else is getting out, and pretty much talked out about it. So I just want to see some action, possibly. I don't know exactly what that looks like, but I do have a few ideas. Yeah, just something around that.
That could be something that, law enforcement committee brings forth or helps coordinate for this training. That's helpful.
And for the record, I'm working on bringing, and you know her, Rashida Valida, to do a forum on alternatives to incarceration.
That was my teacher.
That was your teacher? Looking at October for that.
Any other recommendations? Dante?
Sorry, it's not a recommendation maybe, or maybe it is, a comment similar to what the brother spoke about reentry programs, et cetera. Is an idea that I've floated with the mayor's office. Philly currently does it, a couple of other cities are doing it, that there is a program now that it exists whereby, and I'm trying to push for, the city offering tax incentives to those businesses that provide jobs for people with a felony. And so we can talk about, ban the box kinds of things all day, but that doesn't incentivize anybody hiring anybody. And so how do we incentivize that? And so I would just encourage you to, if you want, just to Google Philly's program in terms of tax incentives for hiring felons. And so it may be something that the commission may be interested in supporting and or pushing in or working for.
Thank you. Alan?
So one idea, so when we sent folks to the Governing for Racial Equity Conference, one of the things that we asked of the folks that went was to report back to the commission on what they heard and how we might apply it to our work. So if we're going to bring forward a series of educational events, then I think that might be one of them we should plug in sooner rather than later. And then the other question is around, what are we envisioning as far as these meetings? Are we going to have them quarterly? Is there a plan for how we line those up?
I don't think there's a plan in place now, but if you have a recommendation I think we currently have it set up to where they'll be get an hour before our normally scheduled meeting. So 3 to 6:30.
I think we should have a plan because, we're going to gather, 8 or 10 ideas, so we should know what, are we going to have one every month so we can knock them all out this year, or if we have them quarterly, that means we've got 2 years worth of ideas right now. I think that
We can knock them out. I think with everyone's help in sourcing, if there are sources of information or trainers, ideas, if everyone's committed to providing that type of information, I think we could knock these out this year, quite a few of them this year, and monthly, to answer your question on a monthly basis.
because then we're also asking the folks to be here from 3 to 6:30.
And the question is, can everyone do that?
That's right.
So I can't answer that question.
So that's part of the planning process, is whether or not that's what people want to commit to.
Right. I think that is asking a lot if you're asking people to do that every month on a weekday. For me, that's asking a lot anyway. So I would prefer to do it in more of like a quarterly fashion, just because I think it would be a little easier to actually commit to attending those.
Would it be easier to, or later in the evening?
5 to 8 or like 5 to 8 or something.
Yeah, I think that might be easier. It also might be worth considering if we really have all of these ideas for like a continuing education type of thing, to do like a weekend day or something like that, where we address a number of topics. that's just, I mean, it's 6 in one, half dozen in the other for a lot of people. You know, a Saturday can be as difficult as an extra hour every month, so that's just.
Thanks. Kate?
My opinion is you couldn't go to any sort of depth with an hour.
Yeah.
Training, right? And we would need, 2 to 3 hours. At least, right? But if I could, like, especially when we're talking about the white privilege and anti-racism, to do a whole day of that, that would really be exhausting. It's, deep and difficult work. So I'm more inclined to do it quarterly, where we have, a special extended hour meeting and do the training at that another week.
So if I understood you correctly, you're saying an hour later.
Well, no, I would not support having 1 hour every meeting.
Okay.
Because we couldn't go very far with that.
So at least 2 to 3 hours.
Yeah, and so maybe more along the line of quarterly.
But for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a compromise kind of between the two.
Yeah, so as far as ideas for topics as well, there's this topic called cultural sustainability, and it's a part of economic sustainability and environmental sustainability as well. But it's just a topic that I might have you in touch with some people about. And I think I heard something about intercultural communication. Is that anything like cultural competency? Okay, cool. And I don't know if this would be able to be a topic, but poverty, talking about the issue of poverty and the fabrication of class and all of this stuff. And so, yeah. And restorative justice.
Yeah.
Those are the only ones that come to mind right now.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm not sure how to say this. I think the thematic issues are really important. And I do, and I support them. I just want us to be clear about our scope with these. Because the original plan with this was making sure that we're a strong commission organizationally, and that things like, knowing how to navigate the government, the city government is in place. So I guess what I'm saying is I want to make sure we get those foundational pieces down first, because a lot of those thematic work I think should also be available to the community.
Yeah.
Right? And let's not keep that thematic work insular among us.
So I think that what I've heard so far, and we could go on for days with this, I did want to just kind of open up the discussion. What we immediately need to address is the wrap-up retreat, which we have not done. And the GRE conference, so the takeaways from that, because within that may lie additional concerns and questions that we can explore, and our orientation. So I'm gonna scream from the mountaintop, anytime that you bring on new commissioners, there should be an orientation process. And there should be a scope of understanding of how this role works. And perhaps that's a new process that having an orientation we can bring into the fold of how we operate. But I'd really like to see us making sure that we're capturing people's attention at the beginning of their commissioner experience, and the orientation will provide that. So.
Agree. Just quickly, I don't take too much time, but I agree. When I first came in, I felt like I seen just a little bit more of a blueprint on what my role was, what HRC's role was, what we did in the past, what we're doing in the future, and I would be willing to help with that, just because just out of my own experience, I felt like, oh, well, somebody should ask me about this, or I should have been aware of that, so.
I think that's something that the staff person might go around. So it's central to continuity.
Okay. All righty. Any other concerns? Did I miss anybody? East Portland report to council. I was not here when the East Portland meeting took place, but in summary, I heard that from Linda. I probably will yield and let Linda talk a little bit about that. But one of the concerns and questions that has come up is about how we utilize our time in reporting to council, and the information that we're sharing with them when we are out communicating and interacting with the public. How are we bringing back that information to share with the council? And an idea that I believe Dante and Kyle has mentioned and Alan has mentioned on several occasions is making sure that we're utilizing as much time to get our faces before council. And perhaps the East Portland meeting is something that we can share, some of the takeaways that those of you all who attended gleaned from that meeting. And if there were any opportunities for collaboration that we could point out to the council in a more formal presentation. So, Linda, did you want to add anything?
At this point, without my notes, I didn't really.
Okay, okay.
I did take a lot of notes.
Got it. So
Would you like me to get back to you on that?
well, I think the only thing that we really need to figure out as a group is, would there be anyone who attended that particular event be willing to go and present a brief kind of overview for the council as to why we purposefully went out and held the meeting? And second of all, what were some of the key points that we gathered from that meeting, so that they know that we're actually out in the community? Go ahead.
Yeah, I do have some suggestions. So, something about the cost of trauma tickets.
Yeah.
And the unfair property taxes compared to Northeast Portland that we had in outer East Portland. There's a discrepancy.
And we also have notes, we have notes from that meeting.
Yeah, three areas: transportation, employment, and housing.
So based on those notes that you all gathered from that meeting, would you all be willing, those of you who attended, be willing to get together and prepare a brief presentation, Kate? Yes, thank you.
But Mike, I have a question, and that was, I feel a little funny about making the presentation, only because it was my impression that everybody there worked for a social service agency. And I didn't see people who were neighbors, and so that makes me ask why. You know, was it just the weather? Or is there something that we could be doing differently? If we wanna take the effort and go listen to folks, I wanna hear folks who live there, not people who are on social service agencies. So I feel like, if I would be willing to give a report, but it would be perhaps skewed in a way.
I think all that matters is that we're acknowledging that we see that happened, and that as we acknowledge that, that's something we wanna improve next time around. That's how I approach those kind of things. Keep it transparent, this is what happened, this is maybe why this happened, we're in a constant process of improving, or reassessing.
I think there may have also been some neighborhood association. Or,
City official, city.
and some city officials, yeah.
I think what is really important, crucial, is the city council need to hear that we are acting. We went out there, here are the outcomes. That's really what is really crucial. While we are doing that, we'll work on how can we work out attendance issue. But at least we need to inform them that we are continuing. As we did that presentation for them, is here is the next thing we're working, here is the next thing that we're working on. But one of the things actually, we gave homework to the city council's representative to do for us at that meeting, which regards to some policies around housing, transportation, but also employment, like one we talked about, the first agreements. And it took us to go and give us answers to human recognition. So that's another thing we need to follow up on. Yeah.
So I want to be, I'm sorry, I just want to honor that if you all have a concern, please raise your hand, because I actually skipped over Diallo and he's patiently waiting, so I apologize.
I was actually just gonna kind of comment after Kate that part of the reason why people might not come is because this is politics, and knowing people who live out there, including my mom and my brother and sister, people are focused on survival and making money and everyday life of trying to stay afloat. So I think that until we're going to them with something that we're actually giving to help them with these situations, that they're not going to show up.
Thank you.
And just quickly that, I mentioned this in an executive committee meeting, I really want to see us loop back with the participants, so that might happen in conjunction with a city council report. But it's important that we communicate with those folks who gave us their contact information to let them know this is what we heard, and this, if anything, is what's gonna happen from what we heard.
Okay. So,
I had one thing, So, I got a telephone call actually today from Laura Wintergreen, who is the city staff person for the East Portland Action Plan, who helped tremendously with the folks that were there. And she was asking us, she asked me to connect with her about us working in partnership with EPAP around housing displacement. So it's one of the issues that they're interested in bringing forward. She mentioned both out there and Cully, and Cully is a neighbor that's actively involved in addressing housing displacement, so that's just an update.
And they actually have a community organizer they're hiring in Cully, within Cully.
Oh, yeah.
In partnership with Paul. There's a lot of
Really?
potential for partnership there, yes.
Wow. So what are you, how would you like to proceed, Sanji?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna do. So I would recommend that those of you all who actually attended, if you all could get together and kind of fuse through the notes that were gathered, and perhaps create maybe a 3-minute or 1.5-minute summary of what were some of the key points that you took away from that. And based on what those key nuggets are, forward that to me and the executive committee, and let's schedule some time to determine when you would like to present that to council.
There's a lot of us there.
Okay, so I wasn't there, so I don't.
Well, we raise our hands. We
Yeah, who was there?
And,
Okay.
and maybe, who would like to take a lead on that?
Again, I actually
Okay.
already have a document
You
that's
have.
about
Okay.
a page document and start with that, with all this exact same information.
Okay, so I had assumed it was just these 4 folks, but.
It was a whole commission meeting, right? So
Awesome.
so most of the commissioners were there. We had a quorum.
Okay, well, Alan, you're
So
gonna.
I will
take-
forward that to the group, and anybody that wants to add anything to, we can, then it'll go to Sonji. Yeah,
That's fine.
I'm just thinking about timing. It would be nice to get in front of council before they're doing budget, but I don't think it's possible at this point. I forgot to look at the schedule, but I think the mayor's budget has been out now for, I think it came out this week or last week. This week? Last week.
Thank you. The Godfrey Awards. Any updates? Linda, do you want to share anything on that?
I was waiting till we had a liaison to some of the commissioners, but I really prefer to not wait on approaching couple of them on this item as for a meeting that we haven't done. So it looks like we're going to find out what happened with Northwest Natural and proceed from there. And I can call a committee together to organize a luncheon and to brainstorm about different benefactors that might be helping us with this.
So just to give everyone a little bit of history, so Northwest Natural had been our sponsor for the Godfrey Awards. And due to financial constraints, they won't be able to continue that level of sponsorship. So the recommendation at this point is to, reach within the city to see if there are any other bureaus that would like to partner with us, as well as seeking an outside sponsor that would have the resources to support the award. So, go ahead.
Go ahead, Beth.
No, you had your hand up first.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is that we haven't approached anybody else.
We haven't approached anyone as of yet.
Yeah, so the first thing that comes to mind is, I'd be willing to, I think someone within the Jewish community would be willing to step up. So I'd be willing to be a part of reaching out to people, So I'm just assuming, again, she was a member of my congregation, so, I can facilitate talking to, my rabbi and other people. I don't foresee it being a problem, but I'm just offering my assistance to that piece of it, so.
And OAJC too.
Right, yeah.
So, before Northwest Natural told us that they were gonna pay for, donate the room and pay for food, which is really the limit of their sponsorship, we were planning on paying for it ourselves. We had a budget for it. So, if there's any reason we can't have a budget, I mean, we had $200,000 left in the this it's our event. And, you know, I don't think there's any reason we shouldn't use our resources to hold that event. I personally think that continuity is really important with these kind of events, and so holding it at North Residential, I think is kind of a big deal. It's only gotten better in the 2 years that we've done it, and I think that to be able to have it in the same place where people are familiar, and they do a great job, I think that we should definitely explore the option of saying, you know, we understand that you can't pay for everything, but can we still use the space and pay for it ourselves? Because it's an HRC event, and we've gotten very good play on it since the beginning. And so it's something that I know that the city council is looking forward to this year. So if we can establish continuity and maintain that consistency, I think that would be a really good idea. And I'd be happy to help out with communications and be on the team.
Thank you. Yellow, we added some time for the Multnomah Youth Commission. You could give us a brief overview.
Yeah, so Multnomah Youth Commission held their Youth Summit Against Violence on April 5th. Including topics like restorative justice, racial profiling and police violence, school violence, gang violence, gender violence, and they were sharing their 57 policy recommendations, and they have 65 action steps as well. I was going through it to try to pull out human rights related ones, but I think that I should just hand that over to the policy committee maybe and have them be the experts in that. I want to make a copy of it before we leave though. So yeah, I was just letting the commission know in case anybody else is interested in seeing what you have to say, because it's complex stuff. So
Thank you.
I just want to make a note about that. So they come up with Multnomah Youth Commission these policies every year, and we've had them. I mean, they come to the CPRC and present the ones on criminal justice and the ones on human rights, and they have these really good policy suggestions. The problem is connecting them to who needs to hear them.
Right.
So I think there's a space here to assist with that, and either on the general human rights ones that are maybe particular to some of the goals that we're trying to accomplish already, even some of the specific policy ones, and there's some other criminal justice ones. So I think that should be a further conversation there, because that got stuck. We talked about that a couple years ago, and it got stuck somewhere.
yeah, and you know what's funny is that they only had the policy recommendations the last time we talked about it. And because of the fact that they keep getting stuck, that's why they came up with these action steps, because they're like, what are people doing? They need to act. So
Are those accessible via the internet?
I haven't found them on the internet. I got this when I went. So I'm gonna make copies and I'll send it in email, but I'm gonna get copies also, hard copies to the committee, policy committee.
Okay, so I think that would be helpful even for the entire commission, to take a look at and see if we can provide clarification on how those policies marry with upcoming work or ideas for upcoming work in the new year. So thank you for bringing that. Thank you both for it.
So you attended, the full day?
Not the full day. I attended for, yeah.
Moving on to committee, task force, and liaison updates, and specifically focusing and honing on the roundtable report, some of the recommendations that we pulled from the report, and how they specifically apply to your committee. I know some folks may not have had a chance to make the correlation between the roundtable report, but if you have had an opportunity, if you could share that with us during your update, that would be helpful. So the policy committees first. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's, I believe in about 5 minutes, not because I want to just have to drop my daughter off.
Okay.
So, but there was something the committee formed, but I hate to skip out. Sorry to be late, I hate to be early, but just dad duty calls.
So do you want to go, ask to go first, is that what?
Yeah, or that was the other part.
Sure.
Is that fine?
Is that okay?
Is that fine for everybody? All right. Just really briefly, we formed the LERCOM committee, and that's just the Law Enforcement Review Committee. Our mission statement, I'm trying to remember it off the top of my head, so something up, but it's to protect and serve community citizens and individuals who interact with law enforcement. Sound about right? And we are in the beginning, we're in the beginning stages, but we've come up with some good ideas and things we want to talk about. Specifically, something of our now actions, sit down, is the young lady who just got, the 9-year-old who got handcuffed and arrested and so on and so forth. So we're individually and collectively gearing around that to get some attention and education and awareness and some comfort brought to everybody who's affected by it. And that's pretty much where we are right now with that. And you guys have any questions, feel free to email me, call, text, myself. Amy, Diallo, Abdul, for the moment.
And Kate.
Oh, yeah, I'm
Kate's
sorry.
with us too.
And then just in the last HRC meeting, we CPRC offered police community to come to CPRC and just share a little bit about the work so that we, at least on CPRC, know what your the mission is. Because everyone there knows that it's being created, but people have been asking me, well, what is that exactly? And I don't really know completely, so we want to offer that space whenever you want to be able to do that.
And then we wanted to make sure that we were very concise in distinguishing the two from each other, but also, so we'll, without pigeonholing myself or anybody else, we accept the invitation.
Yeah, I think we should figure out a way for at least one of us to go to the next meeting, for sure.
I'll go.
Go ahead, okay.
Would you try something like so I can like?
No.
No. So yeah, if you guys want the mission, I can send it right now to the whole commission. And also the 9-year-old handcuffs. Are we gonna cover that at all or no?
So
Because there's some actions that we are going to be taking, and we're hoping that if anybody else is interested in doing this kind of work and to work with us, because I think Amy is going to go to CRC to actually talk to them. Somebody's going to go to talk to the mom. If you guys don't know the situation, basically a 9-year-old was handcuffed in front of her house, and her mom wasn't allowed to go with her to downtown as she was mugshotted and fingerprinted, and she was in panic as well. And it was because of a fight between her and another little girl.
That had happened a week prior.
That happened, yeah. And so we talked about like there's a lack of policy for children, to protect children. Abdul was extremely articulate in talking about how parents should be involved with these kind of things when it comes to children. And I don't know, is this the HB 2192?
Yeah.
Was that from you?
Yeah, it is and was. And it's just a zero tolerance policy, just reducing the school to prison pipeline.
Right.
And some of the language in this policy should have and could have been used during that transaction. I'm sorry, I'm just distracted over here. Don't play with that rule. So, some of the language in House Bill 2192 should have been implemented in the way officers or government or educational folks handle these situations, and it's already, to my understanding, it's already been passed. So the thing I feel like is how to implement that, how to make sure that we're doing restorative justice, behavior mediation, having additional programs for adults and young adults who are who basically are facing this. And it's, and I'm probably just like skimmed around it. I'm sorry for bouncing around it, but it's pretty much just reducing the prison to the school to prison pipeline. And now that young lady, 9-year-old, is mugshotted and fingerprinted and so on and so forth, she falls right into what this is talking about. But there's no policy to protect her or anybody else going forward. Which also you can tie that into the mass industrial prison complex where folks are being locked up like crazy, black, brown, white, whoever. It's just not right. It's not solving the problem.
It's not.
Without option of everything else. So.
If I can just tag on to that, just to complete or Portland Parent Union. Linda, can you provide us an introduction to Sheila? And I'm gonna leave a little bit early tonight because I understand CRC is actually gonna discuss among themselves about the possible need for a policy. I think Mom came last meeting of theirs to share what had happened and produce a complaint. So yeah, we are inviting those of you who want to get involved or have suggestions or insights to send them our way. And so there's, the news has picked it up and then today I noticed that the Portland Police Bureau put out a immediate release saying that they are reviewing their juvenile custody directives. So there's three categories of directives that they're looking at, and that's prompted by this incident. So, and they're also asking for feedback. So those are kind of the things that we're playing with. But right now, I think we're gathering information, and pretty soon we're going to want to make a plan. And I personally would like to see the action happen from HRC jointly with LURCOM. So it's a strong statement as well as we get LURCOM introduced into what makes it think. That's not complaining.
I'd like to say, just as a woman, that this little girl was taken downtown in her bathing suit in front of a bunch of strange men. Her bathing suit was wet. I mean, did she get pneumonia? Was there air conditioning in the car in the jail? I mean, that's just sexually humiliating for a little girl. Little girls wear their bathing suits at home or at the pool. They don't wear them out in a police car or jail or any public place that I know of. So.
Yeah, she had been running for the sprinklers before they got to her house.
Was this at McCoy Park?
It was instant sprinklers.
Columbia.
It was probably McCoy, that's right.
So does that cover, thank you all for bringing that to the forefront and clarifying how our LURCOM is going to be engaged. Does that conclude your, go ahead.
Oh, is there a place for us to make a statement or release a statement, or is it Human Rights Commission?
Well, that's one of the options that we could do, yeah, actually, certainly. The Oregonian put out an opinion report, an article about it. I'm not sure that's the only thing it's definitely not our only option, right?
There's a lot of opportunities to do stuff with this because it's such a direct issue that is a part of a larger conversation. So
is there someone within LURCOM that is drafting a statement, or?
We haven't decided that it's a public statement that we would make. I think we're concerned about policy, and the culture. But we didn't, as I said, we were just wanting to be sure we're gathering the information.
So do you think after the CRC meeting that you'll be in a better position to state whether or not you all will do anything or would like to make a statement?
Yeah, I'd like us to talk about this again, say on Monday, early next week, if not before.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to commit for Friday to give a report to LURCOM as well as anybody else who lets me know that they want to be involved about what CRC is floating and any other developments.
Okay.
Yeah. Do we ever do like letters to the editor?
Yes.
Because this is something that's straightforward.
Yeah.
I mean, as the committee that's focusing on this, it would be a great idea if you have the capacity to get something in writing and get it to somebody and have it and get it out there, even if it's it can be a very obvious, you don't need a ton of background to say this is crazy.
Yeah, and my thinking is that's kind of an obvious thing. And what I would love for us to do is provide solutions.
Well, I know, but you can do both.
Indeed, right.
So,
And we need a little more
I think
time
you
to
can
do
do,
both.
I think you can do one right off and then do another one.
Do two.
Yeah, you can do lots of different things, but that's just one strategy. gets us out into the public, it makes it clear that we're paying attention to these things and that we care, and especially now that there's a committee that you guys have founded that is addressing this very issue. I think it's a great opportunity for LURCOM to start, hit the ground running, so.
Well, I'm willing to support you all in any way to move things along as fast as possible. I know that was one of on our chart of many ways to expedite attention, that was one of the things that was brought up, is how will the chair support the response, so.
Right. I'm fairly certain we would be published. And I'm willing to help.
So let's make a timeline very quickly on when we want to do this, at least Friday. Are you available Friday? Friday?
Yeah,
Okay.
Friday to me or to submit the
Just
list?
to have a discussion and then have a draft ready to go. Is that possible?
If somebody could just get you a statement by Friday for you to approve and get to the Oregonian, I think that would be really great. I mean, even if it's that sort of broad strokes thing.
Okay, so I hear everyone saying we need to make a statement, but I don't hear any volunteers to make the statement. So should I volunteer? I can
Maybe just
volunteer.
maybe
You want to volunteer?
I haven't moved us to statement yet because I feel like I'm still in an information gathering process now. I wouldn't block somebody else from going forward with something, but I think my use of time, I want to attend to this meeting and,
So what I'll support doing with Kate is sending a letter to the editors, and Kate and I will work on that and include you in the conversation. We'll have something ready by Friday, if that's okay. Okay.
You guys can keep me in the loop as well.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Okay. Anything else from LARCOM? Okay, we skipped over policy. We're coming back to you.
Okay, great. So I went through the roundtable event report and teased out anything that was specific to public policy in general. At the last couple Human Rights Commission meetings, I've mentioned some rethinking about the function of the committee, and a couple of other issues, including membership, that we have 2 Human Rights Commission members who currently serve on the policy committee, which hasn't been meeting because, yes, I was working in Salem every day at my last job. I now have a job with ONI, so I'm working in Portland every day and much more available. My schedule is different now. I'm not commuting for 2.5 hours every day in Salem, so that's exciting.
Congratulations.
Thank you. This is week 2. So with that, I'm going to go into the roundtable stuff specifically, but before I do that, what I had mentioned previously is I was thinking that at this stage it would make a lot of sense for me, now that my schedule allows, to attend and participate in a lot of the other working bodies, because there is so much policy-related stuff going on in the other bodies, or if it doesn't make sense for me to attend a particular meeting, to at least connect with membership from those committees about what policy initiatives are going on and how I can be supportive, and loop Kyle in, and then possibly having like quarterly meetings where we have more participation and hopefully more of a, I don't know how to characterize this, but a role in forming council on some of the issues that we're hearing as a whole and participating in some of those policy conversations. Does that make sense to everybody? So what I'm trying to do is not compartmentalize or put policy over here and everything else is over here, but I've actually seen that it's been a natural, organic process. Policy issues have been coming up in all of the working bodies now, especially after our restructuring. And so what I'm trying to do is lend support, go to where the work is happening and support in that way. And then also carry forward with our legislative agenda and other stuff with our small group now that I have time for that. And I will be reapproaching all of you maybe at one of the pre-monthly meeting trainings, however those are structured, if there's an opportunity to share about the committee and what work might be of interest to all of you. I would love to recruit some more folks who like doing that kind of policy stuff, because I can't, capacity considerations, I can't possibly help all of the working bodies with your policy work, as well as more people could do that, so more than a year. So yes, assuming that makes sense. Moving on to all of the things listed in the report. policy committee wasn't explicitly called out, as were some of the other bodies of the Human Rights Commission, but there was mention throughout of need for analysis or work around different policy issues. And so one area that I definitely noted was law enforcement monitoring and advocacy. There was a request that the Human Rights Commission assess impact of city law enforcement policies. There's been some work around use of force policies and so forth in the past. I would be connecting with those currently addressing that to see if there's anything that I could help leverage, help support. Under that, it was mentioned advocacy with the mayor's office, the Portland Police Bureau, private firms, and oversight bodies. And additional issues mentioned were TriMet, ticketing, and Portland Police Bureau and gang dollars. So I'm happy to support, if maybe the best way is sort of putting the request out to you, for those of you working on this, to please, or if you see intersectionality or anything that I can be helpful with, let me know.
How about, the juvenile custody directive?
Yeah, okay.
Let's get you looped into that right away.
Yes. So, okay, sorry, one more sort of like global comment. Now that I am trying to get calendar all of these different meetings, is there a universal calendar that we're all accessing that houses all of our meetings? Okay.
Well, we're not allowed to, but there's.
We're not allowed to.
Yeah, we're not.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, but there's kind of one, which is
Okay.
an HRC.
Okay. Well, then I guess I'll just be asking you, Brent, if you wouldn't mind sending me so I can work that out. And then the next big area mentioned where I think policy might lend some support is housing rights. There have been a lot of houselessness interest in this body and conversations about an upcoming summit, I believe, and maybe some opportunity for some policy analysis or advocacy support around budgets, land use agreements, other things that might be helpful. So some of the things bolded under housing: advocate for a safe outside shelter, work on use of public space policies, partner with housing organizations to provide workshops to renters regarding rental laws, homeowners' rights, and foreclosure issues. So if there's any interest there, I'd like to be helpful. Advocate for inclusionary zoning, enforcement of rights pertaining to homeowners and renters, protection, Section 8 vouchers, supportive housing, and funding for people with disabilities. So I'd like to be helpful with any of that. And I'm having a hard time reading this handwriting of mine. Work with communications committee to share info. Is the other thing I have there. So. And then the Human Trafficking Task Force, advocate for funding to support victims and survivors, particularly for legal support. A lot of that work is already underway, but if there's something I can do, we previously talked about vouchers for survivors and attending educational institutions. I don't know if that's still a hot topic or a need. So that's basically it's think of me as a supportive role in your work, and so I'm trying to connect with what you're doing and how I might be helpful. And then I'm going to need some help maybe with the larger body prioritizing once I get a sense for what's needed. What should I really focus on as like one person plus Kyle right now? And then we'll also convene again as a meeting body and come to you with stuff in regards to the legislative agenda and all that kind of stuff. And Damon, I know you mentioned you're also maybe interested in the public policy committee, so sorry I left you out. Maybe.
What I was gonna say was that I am interested in joining that in particular, we do have some stuff on the HTTF. I'm gonna ease off the HTTF and I wanna focus more on that, on their committee. But I wanna, what you just talked about in terms of playing a role in each of the committees related across the policy stuff. So that includes HTTF and all of them. So, yes.
So yes, you'll join the.
Yes.
So the three of us will meet about some of the legislative agenda stuff and other things, and then also supporting all of the groups. Okay, great.
Exactly.
Yay.
That's
Thank
really
you.
exciting.
think IZ is definitely something that we're gonna look at for
Okay.
HRTF in the fall. It was mentioned at the city council annual report that Kyle did. Commissioner Fish mentioned it, so I think it's gonna be potentially on the city legislative agenda.
Okay.
And as you know, Malloy is our man on IZ.
So we're in a unique situation right now where we're short on time and this is the time that's allotted for public comment. I will deal, obviously have to deal with communications committee, HTTF, HRTF, the nominating committee have not presented, and CPRC on the committee updates.
One way we've done this in the past, just because we want to respect the public, is to just rearrange the time. And so if these committees do need to speak, then we just have public comment now, and then we'll just go a little bit long if we need to.
So why don't we go ahead and yield to public comment now? And Ms. Courtney?
I just wanted to offer a couple of suggestions. I apologize in advance if you guys have already thought about this.
If you could
You want
come
to
to
come
the
on
front
up,
of
because
the
we want to,
room so we can.
it would be nice because then we could, you've got an injury.
Oh,
That's fine.
I just wanted to offer a couple of suggestions if I may. As I said, I apologize in advance if you guys have already thought about this. As you know, I've been out of it a little bit. As far as the inclusion of people who, providing translators and stuff like that, how about ADA? Have you guys thought about ADA stuff at all? I know firsthand, it's difficult to get into some of your meetings in a wheelchair. It's, some people need to have translation services, so they would have somebody, instead of doing a sign language, they would have things in written form and computers and stuff like that. That would be another idea of a way you could spend your money for the coming year. I'm also wondering about the human trafficking. If I could suggest, get a hold of CIO, the Center for Intercultural Organizing. They have a very diverse population, and they've got their fingers in a lot of things, including racial profiling, or profiling. I had them change the racial part because it's not always about race. They are submitting a bill this year into Senate to end profiling, so you might want to look into that and get in touch with them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I can look at it. Lamont? Is Lamont? Hey, Lamont.
Yeah, I'm here. So, back for Portland Commission on Disability. For any of you who have never seen it, we have something that goes out once a month called Disability News. For anyone, there's a couple copies here, and you can grab them on your way out. But if you are interested in receiving it, I know I asked someone to pass it on to Sam because of this is where we put the notice of our meetings, and he's our liaison. So I have a sign-up sheet, and if you are interested, you can go ahead and sign up, and Patrick will put you on the list, and you'll start receiving the disability news. We cover all kinds of outside events, but we also put in our meetings, and our last one, there was a specific partnership with a person who was having problems with a parking spot up at New Columbia, and they worked together and had it changed, and it was wonderful. And so that doesn't happen that often, but that makes it, and there were things like that happen. The other things I wanted to let you know is I had talked about us having a youth event coming up. We've decided to hold off on that, and we're going to do it in the fall because our youth commissioner gave us some really great advice about what youth really need, rather than, I was feeling like we were swimming around, and so I would actually like to tap into some of, and I'm hoping that we can actually even put together a video about
what are the steps you take to be active and to become a leader in the community? And I'm hoping that maybe that's something we can do. The last thing is we do have our ADA celebration that will be coming up in July. More information will come in the future, but it's Americans with Disabilities Act, and we will be celebrating it on Saturday, July 26th. And we're going to find an outdoor venue, and it's going to be really fun, and we're going to have an open mic and all kinds of fun stuff.
What was it called on July 26th?
That's the Americans with Disabilities Act, and we don't quite have the title for it, but we tortured our youth commissioner and made her listen to the War, What Is It Good For song, because we're going to use that to make our own anthem. ADA, what is it good for? Lots of absolutely everything.
Thanks, Lamar. Charles? See if there's better.
Hello again, Commissioners. My name is Charles Johnson, and want to particularly encourage you to think about how you can support human rights and make equity-lens decisions regarding the financial situation you find yourself in. I would encourage you to try and find as much time as you can in your personal schedule, singly and together, to do outreach and interaction with the community. And when you do that, think about the fact that if Kate Laura goes to have a small public forum or even a private meeting with a victim of human trafficking, her situation when she chooses what to wear is very different than a low-income recovering person. I think it's within your authority to offer honoraria and stipends to people who are engaging in important public outreach work, so that if you're dealing with somebody who's been a victim of police brutality or sex trafficking, you're actually, unless there's specific prohibition within the guidelines for this commission, you're able to take them to dinner, to give them clothes that they would feel most comfortable and most presentable being in a public venue in. The less of this money that can go through contract suppliers like Office Depot and Office Max and renting venues and necessary but unglamorous things, and the more that can go to focus on the first words of your name, human, is the best way to deal with this, hopefully about $10,000 worth of money that you have available to really energize this commission and connect with the public. That doesn't mean there's no chance for frivolous things. I think all the city commissioners ride around in a cool little car at the Rose Parade, and there could be opportunity for the Human Rights Commission to partner with the city leadership in that way. There's no reason why if those people can be involved in handing out deeds and stuff like that, that there can't be little quarter sheet flyers and stuff, and human rights commissioners walking alongside the members of the city council, those commissioners. And when you're looking at the decision on how to deal with that, one other project that may have some potential to be hard to engineer, but I would encourage you to partner with libraries. And I think that unless there's specific prohibition, you can actually offer cash and or school supply scholarships to get youth participating in summer reading programs to do a June human rights essay, write about their own experience or experience of a friend who was affected by racism or issues facing their children. And I think we have the capacity to do that within the next, we got 50 days. But I think you'll find there's partners in the library. There's at Central Library, there's a specific Spanish language librarian, Javi Moran. And these are programs that will help increase, if we can't, it's hard to do metrics like business and capitalists want to do and know how the human, but you can know that you're engaging with our fellow human beings who are facing the greatest challenges in Portland and getting those stories out. I was glad to hear some advocacy for a strong, swift restatement of the obvious, that there's been a disgusting mistake when a 9-year-old girl, oh, she happens to be a young lady of color. Imagine that. She didn't get it. It didn't happen in Lake Oswego. It didn't happen in the West Hills. Again, with your budget surplus, I think that investing time, I think that you're ethical people. I think that you'll know that you're not treating yourselves to a meal when you talk to somebody, but if somebody goes to North Portland and finds out what that young girl's favorite restaurant is and has a discussion around a dinner table with that family and stuff like that, those are things that this budget can be used for. I encourage you to, even though I understand that you're in situations where you partner with law enforcement, I hope you'll use those partnerships to encourage people to break the thin blue line so that police who have common sense will say, wow, I wonder what kind of personal crisis that officer must have had to misbehave in that way. Because that's what it was. It's unacceptable behavior in civilized society, whether it's Portland that's weird or not. I encourage you to liberally interpret any ethics constraints you feel you might be in to be on the side of the obvious victim of misconduct here. Perhaps when you're dealing with the your future, I don't know what your process is, but I also want to mention road trips, getting out and engaging. Someone else mentioned CIO. For you to just, I'm sure that they can find an opportunity for you to be there and have. It's kind of ironic that the Human Rights Commission has this great meeting space in OEHR, where we're in a situation where downtown Portland has challenges about human rights. It would be better to go to the areas where lower income and minority people are generally pushed out to. I know that my experience riding TriMet in the city center is very different than when I take the yellow line or the blue line to the end. And we want to connect with those people and make sure to know that the things that happen downtown with the Human Rights Commission are fully connected to all those areas. I was glad to hear you talk about recidivism. I hope you'll think about how income inequality and the wealth gap impacts human rights. And one of the events that might be part of your bringing your budget in line with where you'd like it to be, Juneteenth. Is there anything that y'all do around Juneteenth? Thank y'all.
Charles.
Is there anyone else on public comment?
That's it.
So, wrapping
No.
up our committee updates, I think we stopped with, where did we start?
CPRC.
CPRC?
So, that is from CPRC. Thank you, Ashley. Actually, we covered the whole point that's part of CPRC. And I think that we need to be talking also to the about is part of TriMet, who is part of parking, private parking enforcement, all of those as part of the round table that we've done a lot. So I say maybe CPRC that need to decide who's taking what in those areas. But in last meeting also, just briefly, because of the time, in last meeting discussions was a lot about a couple of topics. One is the chair, points of the chair. Second one, vice chair idea and this meeting as we discussed here. And the third one was about an event that is Latino community in Portland Police Bureau that we have together, but not run by us, or we're part of it. No, it's between these two entities in the Holy neighborhood that already took place. So that was a big discussion there about this, and a lot of discussion about support from us for funding for them to provide translators, but they worked it out later on. And I'm glad that we are purchasing some translators. So that's briefly quick update for us.
I think also as part of this, are we ready to move forward with a recommendation to HRC for CPRC chair?
One thing because moving about appointments of a chair for CPRC, we need to decide about having a chair and appointing one, and that has to come from. So, if I want to address that one, just to let everybody know that in the last meeting, there is a suggestion in the vote for me to be the chair for the CPRC, and they talked about it, and they talked about it a lot, and they came to the decision that I will decline to go take it role.
So you're not going to take it?
No, and give opportunity to somebody else to learn and take it role.
So you're not gonna be the chair?
So I don't think we are ready.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. We're ready to move forward again.
So we will need to come back to you with a recommendation for.
Anything else from CPRC? Okay. So nominating committee, is there anyone here that would,
Nothing to add,
nothing to add? Thank you.
from what I've already done.
Okay. HRTF, that's the one. Anyone else from HRTF?
I am, I guess, so the only two quick HRTF things will be, one, we're working with CEC on planning the roundtable forum event that will be around people without housing. So we're getting out to do some outreach on that. And then also, I guess, an HRTF event will be bus tours. And so we are working with the Fair Housing Council now to get bus tours and race talks, I think, to schedule bus tours probably the weekend of July 10th and 11th. It'll happen on 2 days, a Friday and a Saturday. And it looks like, the last I heard from HCO was that looked like a time that would be, might work for them.
Can you mention when the houselessness summit?
We don't know, we're doing outreach right now, what we're talking about as a concept is something in early fall.
Early fall, thank you.
Thank you. HTTF, that's covered. And anyone else from HTTF?
Pretty much. We're gonna be meeting with, someone from Representative Carolyn Tomei's office in early June, talk with them about, potential bills, so. Any other updates on HTTF?
We are going to be co-sponsoring a table with IPR and Irene Conan at the Latino Conference on June 13th. That is going to be an all-day conference. None of us are going to be able to be there all day. So it's an opportunity for us to commingle any other, I think, HRC member who wants to attend and table at the conference. If anybody's got written materials that they'd like to put out at the conference, please just let me know, and I'd be happy to do that. And if you want to come and sit at the table, please do let me know, because
That's a PSU, right?
I actually don't know where it is, but I think so. I'll talk about it at the next meeting and send out material, but we will have an opportunity to be there. So, yeah.
And actually, one other thing, I think since the child trafficking event at, that cable coordinated, I think that's been since our last meeting, so, all the members of HTF attended that, and that was a great event.
Good press. Yeah, nice job, Katie. That was excellent. It was a great event.
Yeah. That was a sunny day.
Well, it was well attended for being Sunday.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I don't think so.
Communication, so I'm the lone person. I'm recruiting members to my committee if anyone wants to join. So some of the roundtable suggestions that came out specifically were creating the clearinghouse of information that people can utilize our website for. So that's going to be one of the tasks that we fold into the transition plan that I will be working with whomever the new person will be, along with Jeff, when he has the opportunity or time to support us in uploading kind of a clearinghouse or quarterly on information that's going on, new resources that are available for folks that are in need of services. So that information will go on the website hopefully once this person joins us. The other piece was our communications newsletter, and I'm happy to report that I have created the layout. Unfortunately, the computer I was using, the computer I'm using now is not as sophisticated, so I'm not able to marry the template that I created. So I've actually started from scratch, and I can pass it around just to give you an idea of where things will be placed. And in areas that seem very blank, obviously a breakdown wouldn't be there, but I open it up for recommendations from you all. It's very rough, so I'll pass that around. And then the other piece that came up, actually in conversation with Maida, and also pointed out in the roundtable report, was how are we partnering with other organizations to really get the biggest bang for our buck, noting that resources are drying up every day. And Maida has actually been very instrumental in offering the United Way as a resource. So as we have specific events, specific outreach or news updates as they relate to the Human Rights Commission and work that relates to either any of the core areas that the United Way is working to support, that we can utilize them as a cross-marketer. So if there are news events or events that we have or participating in, sending that information to their communications department that has an expansive following to share that information with a broader network of an audience or broader audience. So I think those were the bulk of the roundtable. Ashley, I know you got that memorized.
Yes.
You're like, ooh, let's see, scroll through.
That all rings true for me. So there was a lot of people expressed in a lot of different ways the need for the clearinghouse.
Okay. I feel that this meeting should be adjourned. Is there a motion?
I have the OEHRBAC on there.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was ready to go. I'm sorry.
I'll say real quick, as you know, the Office of Equity and Human Rights has a Bureau Advisory Committee, and there is a seat that is available for the Human Rights Commission. I've been filling that role. I'm happy to give the opportunity to somebody else who might want to interact with the office more, have a role that is part of leadership. I'm also happy to continue going, but I thought I would at least let folks know that if there was somebody who's looking for an opportunity like that, I've talked to all of them about it before. Because they are restarting meetings, because the new staff person will run their role will be the staff act, and the meeting is coming up on May 13th. And so I can forward that information to everybody, and if there's somebody that's interested in taking that opportunity, then I'm happy to do this.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
What are the requirements for it? Because
They
I would
meet-
like to go, because I've been one time.
They meet about quarterly, that's the plan right now, and it is essentially to attend that meeting and provide input at that meeting, and we're attending specifically on behalf of the HRC to advocate for.
So kind of like a liaison, give updates on what we're doing.
Yep, exactly. It's because the office is obviously our home. I'll connect with you.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, I almost skipped over that. Linda?
The CDC and HRTF are working together on a People Without Housing Solutions Forum that will be happening in the fall. And this is kind of the raw shape of what we're working on. This will give you a list of the potential presenters or guests, the shape of the event, and we're going to be meeting on the 14th, and we will send out communications about who might be helping doing outreach to organizations that can give presentations. So we have some tentative names on some of this work, but nobody has to do it. These are ideas. So.
Anything else from CDC? Is there anything that I've missed on the agenda? It's my eyes are like
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Carol.
Just a question in response to a question that Charles raised. Does the HRC commission every March should Pride Parade or Rose Parade?
Yes.
We do?
Yes.
Pride Parade, that's been
Couple
a
times.
tradition.
Pride Parade's a good one because we miss it a lot every year because it sells out.
Yeah.
And so actually, there's somebody that's
You actually
usually
have to
spearheading
buy,
that.
you have to buy a spot. We haven't bought a spot yet.
Because I think does it happen in May or June?
June.
June? Yeah.
So that was something actually that Emily always took the lead on. We didn't do it last year. She wasn't here. So Linda, did you say you want to look into it?
I'm thinking Starlight. I won't be here. I have a wedding.
for Pride Parade, though, it would be great if we could.
So if there's interest
I can
in
go.
participating, for those committees that have additional expenditures or additional funds that won't be spent,
That would be great.
perhaps we could utilize that for participation in those parades.
Yeah. Sunji, could you look and see if, would you check in with Pride Parade and see
I will.
if we can register?
I will.
That's a great reminder. But yeah, we've got the banner and everything. We did the March on Washington in August. So it happens.
We, as a result of a similar question in the past, we created a matrix of different community events opportunities to march all of that. And I don't know who was the holder of that. I don't know if it was Myra or someone else, but he was taking really good care of it for a while, and I think it just fell off the radar. So it might be good to circle back
And find out
see
who
maybe
has it.
she, who has it. Is it up to date? I don't know, but it was a really helpful tool. You could see when things were happening and if the HRC was interested.
Yeah, that was a thing that the CDC originally was going to take on, and they decided not to.
Oh, sorry.
But so I don't know if it ever really got completed, so it wouldn't be updated at this point. But that's something that we talked about with communications committee sort of running with the new staff. I mean, that's definitely something that the staff could take care of for us. That's a good job.
I'd like to repeat my idea, and I'm sorry I won't be here for it, so maybe it won't happen this year, but the Starlight Parade seems like a really good venue, you know, all the civic organizations are marching. So, one of these years, I'd like to start that as a tradition.
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor? Goodbye.